welcome to Spotlight On, the podcast that brings together business leaders, entrepreneurs, and experts covering a range of topics. I'm Nicholas Barton, CEO and founder of the Barton Partnership, a search firm that specialises in strategy, data and analytics, transformation and change, and M&A. My guest this morning has been listed as one of the top 100 business speakers in Britain and is now an independent business consultant specialising in leadership, people management, team building, peak performance, recruitment and retention issues. He holds a number of corporate advisory executive coaching appointments and is a successful business author, having written 2 books, What Leaders Really Do and What You Need to Know About Leadership. Jeff was a former UK managing director of a UK leading recruitment business and was business manager to Sir Clive Woodward, a former England rugby coach. Over the last decade, he has interviewed some of the UK's leading business leaders and entrepreneurs, including Sir Richard Branson, Anita Roderick, Adam Crozier, Barbara Cassini, Sir Stuart Rose, Greg Dyke, to name but a few. So, Jeff, obviously, we're in a world where a lot of rule books have been thrown out and new playbooks have had to be put together, including how we come to lead and manage in this current climate. So my first question to you really is, what have been sort of the key pieces of advice? What have been the guidance that you have been giving to your network as part of their sort of thought process around sort of engaging in leadership in these times?
Well, Nick, I think the key thing for leaders is that really they should be focused primarily on 3 things. One, they should be focused on providing a very clear direction for their people. So this is the whole notion of the leader acting as a compass, charting where the business has come from, clarifying what the business stands for, but most importantly, where is the business going? Because more than ever before, people in the business are asking themselves, so what's the plan? Who's going to take us out of this mess? Secondly, status quo is no good at this stage. This is about preparing or leading through change. So this is about preparing the organization for change, overcoming resistance to change, and selling the change as being positive. And then lastly, all the leaders on this call will be judged by the decisions they take and the actions they make during this time. So therefore, it's about creating space and opportunity to think and reflect in order to make the very best decisions.
Thank you. So in a world now where, there is a lot of uncertainty and, I guess, anxiety and worry with people, how do leaders, I think first and foremost, when you think about those 3 aspects, how do they start to build, that commitment and trust in a remote environment when you're not physically sitting with the people in your world?
I mean, certainly, this is a time, as you say, where people crave some form of certainty or stability. And certainly it is much easier to engage or lead your people if you can have face-to-face contact. And therefore, it is really critical for leaders to be virtually visible. And therefore, that means by checking in on people, not checking up on people. Probably recording some videos, hosting Zoom town hall meetings, but it's very, very important to be as visible as possible during these difficult times.
Do you think the level of engagement has to increase, though? If you think about a standard week for a leader, they would have their set routine in terms of number of meetings. As part of that, from a practical point of view, do you think that needs to increase, that the level of engagement has to increase as a result of the situation we're in now? Or actually they can stick to the same timetable that they would have had in a normal world, but just move everything to Zoom or Teams, whatever platform they're using?
I think in this case, people have to increase the amount of time they're spending. I was talking to a business leader only a couple of weeks ago, and he spent an entire week phoning every single one of his members of staff. This is a company with 120 people. These were 5-10-minute conversations. And at the time, he thought, is this doing the right thing? The feedback afterwards from everybody was absolutely positive, that this was a great thing for the leader to do. And certainly, yes, you need to have maybe your usual meetings, but I think how you kick off the meeting is really important. We tend to ask that question, how are you? And that question, how are you, has never had more significance attached to it. And therefore, I think going around the table, checking in with everybody, how's your mum? How's your daughter? Are you getting out and getting some exercise? Having that personal conversation to recognize you've got a team of human beings, not humans doing. And I think once you've checked in, then you might then move to the business agenda.
And so you talk about direction and preparing an organization and ensuring best decision. How important is it that leaders, now more than ever, really sort of empower the people within their world in this current situation?
I interviewed a number of years ago Dame Stella Rimington, the former head of MI5, and she said very clearly that leaders have no right to be involved in the day-to-day. She said it's the job of the leader to build a management infrastructure that deals with the day-to-day, whilst the leader looks ahead to look at challenges and opportunities that may lie ahead.
That's interesting. But how do you, whether on furlough or not, how do you motivate or lead individuals that are perhaps, finding this situation, mentally challenging, with anxiety, the stress that this has caused, etc. What has been your view around sort of, engaging those individuals and leading people that are, mentally perhaps finding this whole situation very stressful?
Well, first of all, let's look at what we mean by engagement. Engagement is an environment where people choose to give of their best. And the reality is you have people coming into work, well, in fact, we're working from home at the moment, working at home whereby they have a choice to make. They can do the minimum necessary or they can deliver of their best. And leaders have a significant role in creating that environment where people make the choice that they're going to give of their best. And certainly the government was very interested in this connection between engagement and business performance. Because if you can raise the level of engagement within your business, you will drive business performance, essentially through three areas. One, in terms of an enhanced client or customer experience. Two, productivity goes up with an engaged workforce, and people are far less likely to leave you. So the government created or commissioned a white paper to examine some of the key areas where leaders can raise that level of morale and motivation. The first one was what they described as a strong strategic narrative. And this goes back to my comment about the leader being a compass. So where has the business come from? And I think in particular at the moment, those companies that got through the whole 9/11 phase, got through the financial crisis of 2008, they can display that through difficult times in the past, we've been able to show some form of resilience. So I think we can look back and what lessons can we learn from the past. Two, what does the business really stand for? What are the values of the business? Is it about building recruitment partnerships? Is it about having the best customer care, being the most innovative in terms of identifying candidates? And then lastly, where is the business heading? So really setting a clear direction. So that's the first one. The second point was what they know as employee voice. Now, at the moment, communication could not be more important. Everything a leader says or a leader does leaves a message. And in my experience, too few leaders give enough time and priority to communication. But good communication is two-way. And therefore, it's about giving your people a voice, allowing them to express their opinions, making them feel that their opinion counts. And years ago, I interviewed the former Director General of the BBC, Greg Dyke. And he said something which has always stuck with me. And that is, leaders must first listen to earn the right to be heard. So employee voice, a dialogue, genuine two-way communication is critical. The third area is described as engaging managers. And that is managers that engage with their people as human beings and not headcount. So therefore, those managers will be asking, how'd you get on the weekend? What did you do? But taking a genuine interest in them. And then fourthly, leadership integrity. Now that is, my boss does what he or she says, i.e. there's no misalignment between words and actions. And too often you'll hear a leader exhorting their people to do one thing, and they as a leader are doing something completely different. I remember in particular during the financial crash in 2008, 2009, many people exhorting their staff to get closer to their customers, whilst the leaders themselves spent too much time in internal meetings.
With regard to leaders right now, are there good examples that you've seen of leaders that are successfully, leading in this crisis? Who would you say are bad examples right now?
Well, I must admit, I don't think our political leaders are setting a good example. We have Boris blustering. We have Trump telling bald-faced lies. So looking at both of them, I think a poor example. Of the current breed of leaders, I think the new Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, is very good at question time. I think he's quite stilted when he makes his presentation, but I think when he's handling questions from the journalists, he demonstrates that he knows his subject. And I think he's very clear in his communication. Looking across the pond, I think the New York governor, Andrew Cuomo, brings a certain degree of honesty, integrity, openness, and authenticity to a leadership role. So I've been impressed by him. But of the current cabinet, Hancock, Raab, and the others, I'd say disappointing.
With lockdown easing and furlough ending for many, there may need to be a period of reintegration of colleagues into the business. Do you have any thoughts on what a leader can do to facilitate this?
Well, I think people are craving some form of social contact. I read, in the paper yesterday, I think it said a third of people do not wish to return to work at the moment. And I can understand that. Personally, the idea of getting on a tube is completely repellent. Also maybe an aircraft. But I think at times we will want to get together. And I think this will be a leader spending some face-to-face time. Another one of my clients visited the home address of every single one of his employees, and he had a care package for them, which he left on the front porch. He then retired to the gate and then had a 5 to 10 minute conversation. Things like that, people will remember that, and therefore people will wish to return the favor, and that's when they will volunteer to give of their single best because of that. I remember during one of the last recessions where we cut pay, we cut bonuses. But on a particular day, I sent a card to everybody in the company. And inside the card was a brand new, crisp £50 note. And again, that was very, very well received. It was nowhere near the size of bonuses they were getting, but they liked the gesture. And therefore, I think leaders need to be thinking about some of the gestures they could make, recognizing that we are in this together. Colleagues are human beings with fears and anxieties. And our job is to try and take those fears and anxieties and create some form of confidence, whilst at the same time being honest and open.
And do these times call for a cultural shift? I mean, is there a best fit culture in this current situation then?
Well, the culture will undoubtedly be driven by the leadership, but I think we should recognize that in these times, not only does it require strong leadership, it also requires strong teamship. When I was working with Sir Clive Woodward, Clive Woodward espoused the fact that the England rugby team that won the World Cup in 2003, it was down as much by teamship as it was by leadership. And what that requires is the leader to let go, the leader to empower the team to come up with some ways of working. So I would say certainly at the moment, it may well be quite right to let the team design the best ways of working remotely. Obviously, for them to submit to you, to sign off. But I think the key thing is very much there to allow the team to make some decisions. When he introduced a teamship rules or teamship code within the England rugby team, he asked them to come up with a code on the use of mobile phones, dress code, the writing of books and articles, timekeeping, all in a player's manual designed by the players and monitored by the players.
And I think for me, one of the things that sort of does keep me awake at night when I think about, my role in leading the business is the fear of complacency. I think when we first came into this situation, we all had to adjust. I'm desperately keen to avoid the word pivot because everyone seems to be using that right now. But as you say, we literally had to pivot very quickly from an office-based environment to a complete remote focused environment, and therefore adjust our complete communication strategy and define that and then roll that out. But we're now 3 months in. The dangers of leaders becoming complacent, the impact that can have. What are your thoughts around that? And how do leaders avoid complacency?
Well, certainly what I've seen is that there was a lot of communication at the beginning, and that communication now is waning. So whereas there may have been some communication maybe on a daily basis, that's now moving towards a weekly basis. Certainly, what I would recommend would be a short town hall meeting once a week for everybody. And then I would have other meetings where people are checking in with their particular teams. And I'd encourage cross-communication between teams. I'd encourage some lockdown learning. Here's an opportunity for you to upskill, reskill your individuals. And what you might do, you might bring in some external expertise, but equally you may look at masters within the business that can do maybe a 1 hour lunchtime seminar in terms of a particular subject area in which they excel. So you may have someone who's talking about effectiveness of client meetings. You may have someone talking about candidate care, whatever it might be, but looking at aspects of the business and then allowing people to share their knowledge and expertise within their colleagues. And
one question here is, how do you get leaders to recognise and shed old behaviours that are inappropriate for the future world?
Well, I think that's the most difficult one because people are ingrained in ways of working. And certainly some of the workshops I'm running at the moment is really to allow leaders to reflect on their leadership style and also to reflect on what changes they might need to make to those leadership style. So I would say first thing is get out of the day-to-day. You're probably involved too much in the day-to-day. So therefore, stand up, stand out, look ahead at those future challenges and opportunities and making sure you've got a robust plan for the next 6 months. And again, you've got a plan in place for 2021. So that would be the first thing. And then I would then say, in some of the day-to-day, let go. Let go to enable your managers to deliver some performance, but also let go and empower your people to come up with some good ideas. Because those people who are maybe closer to the customer, they may have the answer to some of the issues that you're trying to address. But I think here is a time where leaders should be questioning everything that they are doing in order to try and find a better way. I use a framework of 4 questions, which I find very useful in framing debate and discussion about performance. The first question is, what are the things that we do, the good things we do, that we must keep doing? Question 2, what are the bad things we do we must stop doing? Question 3, what things do we do occasionally that we should do consistently? And finally, question 4, what things don't we do that we need to start doing? So I just recap, what are the good things we should do that we should keep doing? What are the bad things we do that we should stop doing? What are the things we do occasionally that we should do consistently? And what things don't we do that we should start doing?
And what should leaders do for themselves? This is a great question, actually. What should leaders do for themselves in order for them to be at their best to lead and manage the teams in the business?
Well, the first thing leaders should do is not feeling guilty about taking time to think and reflect. I never forget a very good client of mine who was running a financial leasing business. I went to visit him at his offices to take him out for lunch. And this company of about 260 people occupied one office building. The chief executive was based on the top floor. I went up to his office. His PA was out at lunch. And I looked through the glass front of the office and I could see him. He'd kicked his shoes off. He was lying on a chaise lounge. His eyes were closed and he was laying back and his fingers were in a steeple. And I knocked on the door and I said, sorry, Mike, sorry to disturb your nap, but we've got a lunch appointment. And he was most affronted. And he said, there are 260 people in this building and their families that are dependent on me making the right decisions. So I'm thinking. And he's unusual because he had no guilt about the fact that he recognized that he would be judged by the quality of his decisions, and he wanted to think and reflect. All of the leaders I've interviewed have a place or a time which they use for reflection. And too many people feel guilty about this. They feel that they've got to be running around all the time. Yes, you need to be virtually visible, but you need to create time for yourself to reset, refresh, get your house in shape, get your garden in shape, get yourself in shape so you're making the best decisions. All of us have been gifted somewhere between probably an hour and 2 hours a day of not having to commute. Now, are you just sleeping in that time, or are you taking that time to learn? There's lots of podcasts around. There's lots of webinars like today. Are people using the opportunity to learn? And also, are they talking to other people in other businesses? Again, sharing ideas, sharing concerns they might have. But spend a bit of time on yourself.
What leadership styles do you feel won't work in this new normal that we're in now?
First of all, I don't think any single leadership style would suit anyway. I think a good leader has agility. A good leader knows how to change gear on a regular basis. So I would say an effective leader during these times knows when to focus on the now, just to laser in on a particular issue, maybe a barrier to performance, when to look ahead to the future, when to seize control, when to let go, when to focus internally, when to focus externally. And good leaders, I think, have that sense of knowing which gear to be in at a particular time. And certainly never, ever underestimate the power of praise. Catch your people doing things right and give them a pat on the back. Celebrate small victories, making sure that actually people recognize that you do care. And you will get the company through this. We got through 9/11. Everyone thought the world had changed forever, but we moved back to the way it always was. We had the financial crash 2008. We thought it had changed the world forever, and then things started slipping back. This will be deeper. This will be longer lasting, but I still think we will return to some semblance of normal. Can't tell you when, but at some point it will feel like how it used to feel like.
Well, certainly, I love your optimism, Jeff, and I feel the same way. How do leaders think about building resilience into their teams then in this current situation?
Well, I think, as I said before, I suspect every company represented maybe here on this call has had some difficult times in the past. It may have been difficult times when the business was being founded. And therefore, I think it's looking back, looking at what are some of the lessons. Where did we show resilience in the past? Where did we overcome problems and issues to remind ourselves we can get through this? But certainly we need to be honest. I never forget during a recession right at the beginning, I think around about 2001, and we'd made a number of redundancies. And I was standing up, there was a town hall meeting, and someone said to me, will there be more redundancies? Now, that was a question where I thought, honesty has to be the best policy. But at the same time, I want to be positive. And my view was, we've made a number of redundancies. We now think we have the right size of the business to take us through the recession. We hope that we won't have to make any more redundancies, but we won't be addressing this until at least October. So I can guarantee you now there will be no redundancies until we get to the end of October. And depending how the market is, depending how the business is, we hope there'll be no more. But I cannot promise you there will be no more redundancies. And I felt that that was being open, it was being honest, but I was trying to put some positivity on it. And as I say, I would encourage everyone to look back and really reflect on some of the lessons they might have learned from previous difficult times.
So over the last few weeks, obviously, as part of this shift now, if I think about sort of just from a recruitment point of view for a second, a lot of organizations that we were recruiting for have put their recruitment on hold, but actually now quite a few are taking recruitment processes through and have now shifted their model from face-to-face interviews to obviously video conference interviews. And actually the last 10 placements we've made now over the last month or so, that the entire process has been via video conference. And in fact, we've also seen cases, including in my firm, where we've had people join the firm during this period where there's been no human interaction at all. And now they've started in the organization. How do leaders in that situation where you've had someone start in your team or in the business, working from home, how should leaders think about integrating new members of staff into the business, into their teams in this current situation?
Well, first of all, I noticed that many organizations put things on hold for a while. And then once they realized that this was going to be far longer lasting, then started changing their ways. So, for example, as a business speaker, within the first 3 days of lockdown, every single one of my speaking engagements was cancelled or postponed to when we could have a face-to-face meeting. Since then, virtually all of my clients have come back to say, we need to do this through Zoom. So I'm now as busy as I have been, but I'm busy virtually. I think certainly someone coming into a business via a virtual process, the onboarding experience, you really need to focus on. And therefore, certainly integrating people within their team in terms of conference calls, encouraging people to have some social time on Zoom, uniting a team. Quizzes seem to be very popular. I'm doing at least 2 quizzes a week, so maybe encouraging people to do that. But why can't maybe the manager of that person meet that individual in the open, on a park bench, and or go round to their house if they've got a garden, sit in their garden, or I've had many conversations socially and business-wise, standing at someone's front gate whilst they stand on their porch and do it that way. And I think certainly people would appreciate the person going out to do that. Of course, now we can have up to 6 people outside. And therefore, I'd encourage in some way to do that, but try and make sure this person is included all of the time.
You referenced before, obviously, well, both of us have been through various crises. But if we think about the last crisis, the recession, 2008, 2009, how is there a distinction in approach that leaders should be thinking now? Are you giving the same advice today that you were during that crisis? in terms of how people should be thinking about their engagement. Clearly, obviously, even during that crisis, there was, we weren't in lockdown, we weren't in isolation, but, are the rules still the same that you were giving then?
I'm on the board of an American staffing firm, and certainly we went into 2020 thinking that the economic cycle will probably mean that within the end of 2020 or 2021, a recession was possible. So we put together a recession plan, which we signed off in January of this year. And then as soon as the coronavirus hit, suddenly we realized this recession plan was the perfect plan for dealing with the coronavirus. So therefore, this is about, obviously reducing the cost of the business, reviewing non-essential spend. Have we got the right level of people within the business? So it's a very, very similar decision making. I think the only difference is that in 2008, 2009, which everyone thought was horrific, the economy only shrank by about 5-6%. Now, there's talk here of the economy shrinking by 30%. So this will be the deepest recession any of us will have ever experienced, and it can be the longest lasting. And then on top of that, the cherry on the cake is we've got Brexit to deal with. So the reality is, we have to remain agile, and consequently, we need to be looking ahead at some of these issues. And certainly, where are we going to focus our intention, let's say in terms of client development? Now, we might say anything in the aviation or hospitality sector, we're not going to see them coming back very quickly. There are other sectors that are booming. Food retail, some organizations have doubled. So we might say, okay, let's think intelligently where we're going to do our business development, and let's look at those organizations that are likely to rebound quickly, or businesses that are doing well at the moment. And we may put on the back burner dealing with issues or companies which are struggling at the moment.
When you think about that aspect, we talk about leaders thinking about the future and, again, giving reassurance to their team who may be feeling anxious. So with the situation moving so quickly, and as you said, there's no playbook we can look at as a point of reference, how do leaders plan for the future when there is so much uncertainty?
Well, I think above all, I think it has to be about honesty. And what I tend to feel is that one, leaders default to telling. So therefore, it's creating proper dialogue where people can raise issues and concerns that they might have. Most corporate communication focuses on the what, the when, and the how. And most company communication ignores the why. And it's imperative that as leaders, we explain the why. One of the things I would suggest to people on this call, there's something quite powerful where a relatively junior member of staff might interview the CEO. And therefore, prior to the interview, the member of staff has gone around the business. What questions would you like to ask? And you have an opportunity to have a proper dialogue. And as I said before, I think you need to be open. I think you need to be as honest as you can be. But I think where you can be positive, then certainly be that. But never forget the why. What is the why? And as leaders, there's a responsibility to communicate the big talk. And the big talk is the big picture. It's the vision for the business. It's the objectives and the priorities. But also the leader has to communicate the little talk. And the little talk are those small victories, those little celebrations, but also saying to people, well done. You're doing a good job in difficult circumstances. Take some time off. And the reality is, do you want your people working as they did in the office, which was probably 8 to 6:30 or something like that? Or do you want people to break up the day? Let the team themselves come up with ideas on work hours, work zones, work dress, the best way, again, involve them in discussions about what are the appropriate measures at the moment, what are the most appropriate KPIs. So all those sorts of things may aid.
So questions come through. Do you see the command and control leadership style ever succeeding going forward? I suspect Trump would be a good example of perhaps a bad command and control leader right now. But what's your view on that, Jeff?
Well, I think command and control gets a bad press. If someone's approach is simply command and control, it won't serve them well at all. So it goes back to my previous comment, is that an exceptional leader is agile and is adapting their approach to the circumstances. So there will be a case where you need to take control and your people are expecting you to take control. So where I'm saying that we should allow the team to come up with rules and things, we're not asking the team what the plan is. What we're asking the team is, what actions do you think we can take to get closer to our customers? How can we work more effectively remotely? They're the questions you're asking, but they're looking to you to say, right, this is the direction we're going in. These are the priorities for the business. And then once you've discussed those, of course, you then involve people so they feel they've got their fingerprints on the plan itself. But you should be the architect of the plan.
Mm. Well, and just leading on then, what changes in the dynamics within the C-suite and decision-making are you seeing or you expect to see?
Well, it's interesting to see what's happened in different businesses. I've seen some C-suites where they've all really come together. I mean, quite inspiring way. They've come together with one voice. They've come together all pulling very much in the same direction. Others where, despite they were called the leadership team, they don't act like a leadership team at all. They're acting in their own self-interest. There's silo working. There's a lack of cooperation. People are critical of each other. So it's incredible how people have changed and how people have responded to these difficult times.
So we talked about, as leaders, how we should manage ourselves, take some time away, exercise, as you say, that commute time that we don't now have, what are we going to use that for from a personal point of view? But clearly there are going to be moments as individuals, we're humans ourselves, where we don't have all the answers. We lie in isolation, that period just before we go to sleep where we're looking up at the ceiling and doubts come into our own head about the situation and how we take things forward. How do we manage that ourselves as individuals? And how do we sort of overcome those doubts ourselves in terms of, leading people in the business?
Well, certainly, this is a time when leadership can be quite a lonely business. And I think, first of all, it's accepting that many leaders would share those concerns and those anxieties. And it's normal to do that because certainly at no point in time is there certainty. What we're trying to do is to gather maybe as much data that we need to make the right decision. We take counsel with people that we trust. It might be a non-exec director. It might be a corporate coach or mentor. So I think it's a matter of reaching out, but recognizing that success at this time is probably getting it right 75% of the time. And therefore, don't beat yourself up for the 25% that you get wrong. Celebrate and recognize the things that you're doing right. And I think also along the way, it's about taking stock because plans need to be flexible. So I mentioned that now people should certainly have in place a 6-month plan to take them through to the end of the year. But in a couple of months' time, we need to revisit that plan. Is that plan right? Do we need to make some adjustment to take into account any change in government policy or any changes happening within the market?
Thank you for listening to the Barn Partnership Spotlight on podcast. To stay updated with future episodes, subscribe to our channel on the podcast app.